All right, in this example, we're going to take a look at how we can accomplish lookups when there's a scenario that VLOOKUP or HLOOKUP can't accommodate. And so this is the scenario we're going to be dealing with, but if I look at the completed version, that'll give you an idea of what we're heading towards. And what this is it's a sales estimator, and if you buy a certain quantity of tires, you get a better deal. So you can see right here, product 540. If I only buy one of them, I pay 32.60. But if I buy 5 or more, I get a slight discount. 10 or more, I get a slight discount. And then 20 or more, that's my final price. And so if I come over to the quote builder and I type in the ID of a tire, say 537, it will automatically input the name of that tire, and then it will calculate based on the quantity that I type in. If I type in 4, then the base cost of that tire is going to be $35. And since I haven't met that 5 threshold to get a discount, it's still going to be $35. But let's say I do buy 5 tires. Now I'm getting the discounted cost of $34.79. So there's a lot of things going on here that VLOOKUP or HLOOKUP can't handle. And so let's take a look at 2 new functions. The functions that we're going to be learning to accomplish these tasks are called index and match. They each perform a separate task, but working together, they can be very powerful and overcome some of the limitations of VLOOKUP. So let's take a look at the first scenario where VLOOKUP won't help us. In this case, if I type in the product ID 540, we would expect that when we build this formula that HL road tire would show in the product name. If we try to do that with VLOOKUP, we run into a problem that, yes, we can use a lookup value of 540, and we can create our table array, but the problem we run into is that the lookup value, we can even say that we want the column index to be 1. But like I said, the problem we're going to run into is the fact that the lookup value has to come from the first column in the table array. And in this case, the product ID is not in the first column. So this says that there's no product with the product ID of 540, and that's because of the limitation of VLOOKUP. So let's take a look at how we would use match and index to overcome this. The first function that we're going to look at is match. And match takes 3 arguments: lookup value, lookup array, and match type. The lookup value is what we would expect. We are hoping to find out more information about product 540. So we're going to have that be our lookup value. Then I'm going to hit a comma to get to the next argument. The lookup array, unlike VLOOKUP, is only going to be a list of the product IDs that we hope to look through. So what we're doing is we're looking for a match of 540 within this realm of data right here. Next would be the match type. And much like in VLOOKUP, we're looking for an exact match, but rather than using true or false, we have this 1, 0, and -1. So in this case, we want an exact match, so I'm going to choose 0. I'm going to close out this function and hit enter, and let's take a look at what our result is. Now, you probably weren't expecting a 1. You were probably hoping that you'd get HL road tire. But what's happening here is that we're looking for 540 in this range of data, and it's telling us that it found it in the first entry of that range of data. Let's demonstrate this by trying to look for 538. It says it found it in the 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's correct. You'll also notice that this data is not sorted in order. You've got the largest value up here, then a smaller, then a large value, and so on. So we don't have to have that limitation either. So how are we going to turn this 4 into LL road tire, which is what 538 is? Well, that's where the index function comes in. The purpose of the index function is exactly the opposite of match. Match goes and looks for a value within a range of data. What the index function does is returns a specific value from a range of data. So let's just do an example down here. I'm going to write an index function just in this cell. And I'm going to say that this is my array. And then it asks for its next to be a row number. And so let's say I choose row number 3. Now before I hit enter, why don't you just take a guess at what is going to be returned into this cell. Ready? Okay, we got touring tire. And if you think about it, in that range of data, that is the third entry. Okay? So match finds an entry in the product IDs, and index returns an entry from the product names. So let's use these two functions together. I'm going to go ahead and delete this cell right here. And let's go back over here to our product name that we're trying to fill in. We're going to use these two functions together. So I'm going to say index, open a parenthesis, and the first parameter that index is looking for is called the array. Now the array is where we hope to find the value that we'd like to pull out. And what that value is in this case is going to be LL road tire, but we want it to work for all of the IDs. So I'm going to hit a comma, and then it asks for a row number. Well, that's what match is doing. Match is finding that row number. And so we're going to leave this match formula that we wrote right here. And then I'm going to go to the end of the formula for this cell and close the parentheses and hit enter. And now you'll see that the product name of LL road tire pops up just as we would expect. Okay, so that's how index and match work together. So let's use that fairly quickly to find the base cost of this tire, which would be the cost is if we bought one, which in this case would be $21.49, and the base total, which will be the quantity times the base cost. So let's say in this case we're only going to buy one tire, and let's calculate how are we going to find that base cost. So this time I'm going to start by writing the index function, and let's try to write this formula from left to right. So we have index. The array is where do I hope to find the answer that I want in this cell? Well, the array is going to be, since this is base cost, the list of costs for one single tire. Next, I'm going to hit the comma, and that brings me to the row number. Well, how am I going to figure out which row I want to retrieve from this array of data? I'm going to use a match function to find this product ID within this range of product IDs. So I'm going to start by typing in match. My lookup value is going to be the product ID. Everything in this quote builds off of the product ID and the quantity. So my lookup value is going to be that product ID again. My lookup array, where do I hope to find 538 or whatever number is typed in here? Well, I hope to find it in this area right here. That's my lookup array. And while I'm looking for it, do I want to find an exact match? Yes. So I'm going to close the parenthesis for the match function. And now I'm going to close the parenthesis for the index function. And let's see what we get. 21.49, which is what you would expect for product 538 for buying one of them. Let's test this a little bit more. Let's type in product 539 and make sure we get the correct responses. And the ML road tire is $24.99, so that's correct. So my base total is just simply going to be equals the quantity times the base cost of the tire. Let's test that by putting in a quantity of 3 and seeing what we get. Okay, now that's correct. I know this is giving an error, but it's just saying, hey, I have a formula without values from adjacent cells. So I'm going to just say ignore this error so it doesn't pop up anymore. Now let's get to the discounted cost. Suppose I say I would like to buy 5 of these tires or even 7 of these tires. Once I do that, I should be able to pay the discounted price of $24.72. It's only 27 cents less, but hey, I'll take the discount if I can get it. So the discounted cost, how are we going to triangulate based upon a product ID and a quantity? Now, just intuitively, knowing what we know, if we look at this without using a formula, I'd say, well, it's the ML road tire, so I'm actually going to temporarily highlight that. And it's a cost of, or it's a quantity of 5, but less than 10, so I'm going to get this column right here. And the intersection of these two, the row and that column, lead to the price that I should get for that quantity. So what we have to do is figure out how to write the index and match functions to perform that work for us. So I'm going to hit undo twice so I can get rid of that highlighting. And then let's get to work on this formula. The first thing we need to do is start with a plain old index function. And this time our array, rather than grabbing a single row or a single column, is actually going to be this set of rows and columns. So we're going to need to give this, if you think about math, we're going to need to give it an X and a Y, so to speak, to find the row and column that we need to retrieve our data from. Now we need to retrieve what row number is the first parameter that the index function is looking for. Well, we've already done that before, and we did that with a match function. And the match function says, what do we hope to look up for a row? Well, we're finding rows based on product ID. So I'm going to choose the product ID of the quote builder, hit comma. My lookup array is still going to be those list of product IDs. And I want to find an exact match for this specific product. I'm going to go ahead and close that parentheses. And now I'm going to hit comma, and it's going to ask me for the column number since we have rows and columns within this array. So the way to find that is fairly similar. We're going to match. Now we're finding the column based on the quantity that we purchased. So our lookup value is going to be the quantity cell. Hit comma. My lookup array is going to be the list of quantity numbers up here for the discount rate. I'm going to hit comma. Now this is where it's going to be a little different, because right now we have a quantity of 7, but there is no 7 up in the number of tires that you buy. But we know that we're not going to get the price for buying just 1, because if we buy 7, we should at least get the price discount for buying 5. So we're going to choose less than. And it says it finds the largest value that is less than or equal to the lookup value. Okay, so let's give that a shot with a 1 there. I'm going to close the parenthesis of this match function, and then I'm going to close the parenthesis of the index function, and let's hit enter. So now we see we've got a discounted cost of $24.72. So based on 539 and 7, 539 and 7 is in this column with 5 right here. Let's see what happens if we type in 11. We would expect to get the 539, and the price for 10 or more tires is $24.41, and that's what we have over here. We can actually type in exactly 10, and it will still give us that $24.41. We can go as high as 1,000, right? And we're still going to just get the discounted price for 20 or more tires, which is $24.01, and that's what that is. So I'm going to bump that down to be 18. And now let's just finish up some really basic arithmetic. We want to take our discounted cost and multiply that times the quantity of tires that we hope to purchase. And then this is just a real simple calculation. If I take that base total and subtract the discount cost total, what kind of a break am I getting on buying 18 tires versus paying for them onesie twosie? And it looks like I'm saving about $10.44. If you look over here on the right, I have an answer key that helps you figure out if you have typed in the right formulas. And so let's try one of these scenarios right here. If I type in 537 as my product ID and 5, I should get 35, yep, 175, 34.79, 173.95, and 105. Well, that's it. That's a real basic introduction to match and index. We learned to use them to find an item in columns. We used it to find an item in rows. And we used it to find within a two-dimensional space with rows and columns. One of the things that you need to keep in mind about match and index is it overcomes several shortcomings of VLOOKUP. The most important in this scenario of which is when you don't have your lookup value in the leftmost column, which we do not here, you can use match and index to still perform a lookup in data that is to the right of the results that you wish to return. Well, that's it. I hope this helped you understand match and index a little bit more. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Thanks so much.